Welcome to the 5-Year You podcast, a show dedicated to helping you become the best version of yourself one day at a time. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Kat, and we promise to keep it raw, real, and relatable.
Are you ready to grow? Hey there, 5 Tribe. It's time for us to move on. And this episode is all about how to move on, what that means, and how to shed some things that might be in your life that you don't want anymore. It's going to be an interesting conversation around small things and big things, and we can't wait to dive in. How are you doing today, Kat?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I think this is a topic that's always a good one to revisit every 6 months or so in your life of what's holding you back, what are you moving forward to, and more importantly, how to move on from those things that you know are kind of holding you back. So how do you want to start with this today?
Yeah. Well, when you first opened the episode, I'm like, oh no, what if it sounds like we're moving on like from the podcast or something? I was like, no, we're here. We're talking about self-improvement, becoming the person you want to be, and how sometimes that requires you to change. It might require a change of location, the people you spend the most time with, your friendship groups, your job. There's so many different things. And it can be hard though, because when you become the best version of yourself, you sort of shed the old versions, and there's a loss to that sometimes. And I think that's what holds people back much of the time, because we're comfortable where we are now. We're used to the people and places and things that we currently do, and it can be hard.
Yeah, I've been reading The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate, and it's really interesting because he says that, I mean, normal's a whole other episode, but he says that like we are more likely to stay as we are because we know that and it's comfortable, even if it's not as pleasant, than letting go of that and moving towards something more appealing, greater, more in line with us. And I really had to think about that for a while, because I think we all have that kind of, well, yeah, I want to go get the better job, the better relationships, the better attitude, whatever it is. But I kind of know this where I'm at, and it's not great, but it's comfortable. I think that comfortability is the thing that makes it hard to take those steps towards moving on. And that's really what we do with our coaching, is to help people kind of go, look, you want to become somebody new, so you're going to have to change a little bit. And we don't have to do it all at once, but you can move on from this current state and start moving towards something without it being this super painful experience.
Yeah, one of the things that you coached me on, and I think it'd be good to talk about this, is sometimes you have to move in parallel to move on. Sometimes you have to take a step back to move on. You and I identify as high achievers, right? We're always trying to better ourselves. We always try to push ourselves. But there have been times in my life where I have had to hibernate, right? Sometimes you go through something traumatic, you go through something difficult, you go through a massive life change, and you have to step back in order to step forward in a different way. And I remember going through a really hard time about, 2 or 3 years ago. And I went through a period where I found it very challenging to work. I felt like I would sit down, I'd get ready to write articles. Like I just felt like I wasn't me, because I had gone through such a hard time. My body was sort of like in this shock freeze state. And I remember telling you, like, what has happened to me? What happened to the woman who was like pitching clients and on TV and traveling for work? And it's like, I feel like when I sit down at the computer, I'm having a really hard time working. And you coached me through that. And I guess you can share your advice in the show, but one of your big things was just to remind me that I was right. I wasn't that person anymore, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was a bad thing.
No, and you weren't. And there was a lot of things. The energy that you had before that was very different from the energy you were seeking. So you had a very, if you don't mind me saying, kind of like frenetic pace. You were, you had this big writing business, you were doing brand deals, you had young kids, and all these things were not helping your health. And you were starting to prioritize your health in all ways, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. And that was a big shift. So it required you to slow down. And what was happening was like, but no, I really want to be this this old self had really, I don't know if that old self was happier. It just had a different cash flow situation
Yeah.
and stuff. And that was really the thing that you were kind of going, well, but it's used to be this, and you were assigning everything in your life to a value of one particular thing.
Right.
When in reality, there were so many other better aspects of your life that had happened. You just weren't able to let that part go. But once you started to look at it and go, no, this 5 year version of myself that I'm growing into has more free time, has a different life balance, is not working from sun up to sundown and a little bit in the middle of the night, like
Yeah.
you acknowledge that there were these changes that needed to happen. And we just had to learn to let that part go of you that was no longer in alignment with who you currently are. And that was okay. We all go through life changes in different stages. And that's the point where, that's why you get out of high school and you don't go back. I mean, like, we
Yeah.
all
Thank
grow
God
through
for
these
that.
things. Yeah, exactly. You don't get out of university and go, okay, well, some people go, I think I'll do another 4 years, and then another 4 years and another 4 years. You kind of go, no, post university Andrew, post university Kat is going to look very different. And we're going to grow into that person. And we give ourselves permission to do that over 5 years to wherever. And what had happened because of all the changes that can happen in life, sometimes we lose that vision.
Mm.
And so when we don't have that vision, we cling to the old thing that we know because it's familiar. It's comfortable. It's that nice, warm, ratty old sweater that we have in the closet that smells but it still feels good. And we're like, I'm going to hold on to it a little bit longer.
Yeah, I love it. Points for your analogy for today. And
Thank you.
I do love a comfortable, ratty old sweater, but I think that a lot of this happened before we developed our framework, and we used our life experience in order to develop our coaching practice. And our framework, we have episodes on this. It's called the layers of life. And you have to envision it like a target sign where the center of the circle is your soul and yourself. And it goes out from there to family and social and your activities. And then the outer ring, if you live life from the outside in, everything on the outer ring is your accomplishments, how much money you make, your title at work. But when you live life from the inside out, that is from your purpose, from a place where you're living life in alignment with who you are and with what's best for you from a health perspective, from a spiritual perspective. When you do that, the outer ring becomes the legacy that you leave, the impact you have on other people. And what I realized is that when I was going in that frantic pace, when I was working all the time, yes, those were some of my highest earning business years thus far. But I was also developing autoimmune disease. I was also having a lot of trouble sleeping. And so on the outside, it looked super successful. It looked like, oh my gosh, she's going and flying to New York City and doing this thing. And I attached like my value to that. Like that meant I was successful. That meant I was a person who was contributing something. And when I went through a lot of big life changes and decided to take my health seriously, I started sleeping a lot more. We worked on different sleep habits, different things like that, completely overhauled the way that both of us eat. And as of today, I have no autoimmune markers, right? And a lot has changed in a
Congratulations again on that.
thanks. A lot has changed. And I now know that my value, this shedding of that self, even though it maybe feels like a step back from society's standards, was a massive step up for me. And the point of sharing all that is to remind people that you get to decide what success looks like in your life. And when you are shedding and leveling up, sometimes it might not look the way that you think it will in the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. When you were talking about your old self, as we'll call it, that you've moved on from, the thing that you let go really was that outer layer that we talk about that is
Yeah.
all about, well, look at me. And not that you were saying this, but you kind of alluded to it. Like, look at me. I'm getting the brand deals. I'm going to New York. I'm getting to do these
Yeah.
things. And that's great, but it was coming at the cost of your health and
Mm-hmm.
your soul, essentially. And that self and soul layers that we talk about, which are the first two things we always work on in our program, because those are, you can't keep going. And it's so funny because I was going through the same thing with my health. Again, on the outside, it looked perfect. It's like just everything looked perfect on the outside, but on the inside, I was dying metaphorically and literally. My health was deteriorating at a rapid pace and things needed to change. But it was really hard to let go of my normal so that I could move on, even though it was painful. So, what I'm sharing with you, dear listener, is that you might be feeling this. You might be like, well, it's comfortable and yeah, it's not great. And but geez, the uncomfortability of not staying in this normal pattern isn't appealing. It might not be in that moment, but you're likely, it's from both of our experiences, you get called forward in life. I believe your soul has a purpose and a path, and these things that are hard for you are your lessons that you're meant to grow through so that you can turn around and help the people behind you. And that's really how we started 5 year
Yeah.
years, by going through what we went through and looking back and going, look, here's how you cross this river. You step here, you step there, and you know what? If you fall in, I'm going to rush out. I'm going to help you float so that you can keep crossing the river. I've got you. And you and I helped each other with that. We've helped others with it. It is the best feeling in the world for us. I think I want to touch on this because we talked about it before, and I don't get a lot of good analogies, so I'm going to keep going with this
Gosh,
one.
bringing
But
it back. Give him
here we
one
go, folks.
compliment about an analogy. Here we go.
So think about moving on as that old comfortable shirt that you have. And you know that shirt. It's familiar. You've been wearing that shirt your whole life. And it's comfortable. It looks awful. It feels comfortable, but it's not great. And until you can look at that sweater, shirt, whatever, for what it is and go, you know what? I wore this through all the bad times, all the times I was sick, all these things, and it just doesn't serve me anymore. I don't want to keep my sick sweater anymore.
Mm.
You're going to have to learn to move on from that. And until you learn to acknowledge it and go, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I need a new piece of clothing. I'm going to have to get rid of this sweater so that I can have that hanger clear, so that I can put something new on the hanger and bring something new into my life that serves me more in this moment. And I think a lot of times we have that favorite, we all have a favorite sweater. We all have a favorite thing that we don't want to part with. And it's really not the actual sweater, it's the memory that has, it's the familiarity of it. And when you can kind of look at that and go, I'm not holding on to this because I need this clothing. I'm holding on to it because it makes me feel a certain way. And often that way is safe because it's normal. Then are able to kind of go, okay, I'm going to feel safe and normal no matter what. I'm going to let this go so that I can move forward in a more purposeful manner.
I like that a lot. I think people try to move on without getting rid of the sweater, basically. And that's why
Yeah.
it's a good analogy. I said it again for you because we really can't move forward. There was no way that I was going to be able to improve my health, work on my sleep while continuing to work at the pace I was working. There was no way that I was going to be able to keep the income that came from that type of work at that level and rest enough and recoup enough to make sure that I was okay. And the same thing happens. I think we try to hang on to little pieces of us, but sometimes it requires trip to the donation bin.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to make space in your life for the new, or it will never come in. And it doesn't have to be this huge, painful thing. A lot of times, like the small changes, they add, the small changes always add up. We just need to know what we're moving towards. So when it comes time for, I mean, I know people are listening to this and they're going to think, well, how do I, this has been like my best friend since high school,
Mm.
and they've seen me through thick and thin. We've said before that they are always welcome to come along with you on your journey. It's just that you're not serving them by staying put. You're not,
Right.
if you're, let's just use the sickness analogy. If doing the things you do with this person makes you sick or makes you feel bad or affects you negatively, you need to move on for the sake of yourself, of course, but for the sake of the dynamic. This person is, if they're inadvertently hurting you, they don't want to do that. So you need to learn to let go of those bad things so that you can move forward to the more purposeful thing in your life, that better vision that you have for yourself and for that personal relationship. And sometimes that they're going to fall away. That's the God honest truth. There are very few people in your life that are going to be with you from the day you're born till the day you die. In fact, there's nobody. I mean, we usually outlive our parents. So,
Right.
and I'm not trying to be dire about it, but like people come and go in your life. You know, the people you used to have classes with in university and high school are probably not in your life as prevalently as they were then. They might, some may still be, but people have seasons, and you're meant to learn things. They're meant to learn things from you, and it's okay to move on because you never know when they're going to come back. And holding on to that thing that makes the most sense to you in that moment of keeping your normality. Let's make that a word.
I think it is one.
Oh, cool. That was fun. But as far as you like, if you can just kind of accept that, I'm ready to grow and that it's going to be a little uncomfortable, like to use the shirt analogy, when you take off the old shirt, you're going to feel cold for a second. You're going to feel exposed. But when you put that new piece of clothing on, it's going to feel new. It's going to feel a little different, and you're going to wear it in, and then it's going to feel better than the old way because it's more authentically you. It fits you better now.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of what we're talking about is stepping into a new identity and then coming to a place of acceptance, excitement, and curiosity about the new identity. We coach a lot of working moms, right? And a lot of women feel this change of identity when they become a mother, right? Same for dads too. But it can be very hard to from somebody who is, let's say, working their 9 to 5 job and they're very driven, and like that's a big part of their identity is the work they do, the people they work with, and then you have a child and your entire world changes, and then your identity becomes parent.
Mhm.
And it's very hard to mesh the two, right? And I think a lot of women, especially just because we work with a lot of women, feel this big sense of loss. Like, what's happened to me? I used to be this way, and now I have a child. And so what we like to teach is to, again, remind people that looking back to who you were before isn't serving you, and comparing yourself to somebody in a completely different life situation is also not serving you. Instead, the what people are experiencing is what you're saying, that in between of feeling exposed, of having this new identity that like thrust upon you, right? And having to cope with that, having to get used to the feeling of wearing the new clothes, right? And so moving on is supposed to be uncomfortable. It can be exciting. There's like all these wonderful things, getting a new house, getting a new job, having a new baby. All of these things are exciting changes, but if you feel uncomfortable about it, or you're worried about it, or you don't feel ready for it, I think we like to remind people that that is a natural part of the process. It is okay to feel excited about your new life and sad about the loss of your old one. It's okay to be excited about the new friends and the new place that you moved, and sad that you moved away from your childhood home. You are a dynamic person, and it's okay for you to hold all of these feelings at once. But just
Mhm.
because it feels uncomfortable that you've changed, leveled up, or taken a step back doesn't mean that it's the wrong step to take.
I agree. I think there's a lot to be acknowledged in that. Like when you are moving into that new self, be curious about it. Find reasons to be excited about it. Yeah, and it's going to be hard. There's life's going to be hard at times. That's the adventure of it. But how you look at it is everything. If you look at everything as like this overwhelming burden, life's going to be a lot harder. If you look at things from a perspective of, I'm going to be curious about this. I'm going to be curious about, exploring this new city that I just moved to. And though I don't know anybody here, I'm going to be curious about who crosses my path and the things that I discover, because I believe that life is happening for me and I just need to get out there and see what's happening, versus looking at it like, well, this isn't the old place that I used to hang out in, and this isn't the old place, and this isn't my school, and all these things. You're still staying stuck in the past. That is okay. There's a process for moving and letting go of that stuff, but also get curious, because the more excited you get about something, the more you're going to want to move towards it. And life is always changing. That's the beauty of it. And you get to move on with intentionality and be very, very specific about how you want life to look. And when you do that, life is pretty cool. Life will show you things. When you start to follow that excitement, I can't explain it, but life does get so much better. It's just like, wow, I can't believe this happened today and this happened today. And all these little synchronicities start to line up because you just feel better and you look at things differently, versus the kind of Charlie Brown, walking around with his head down, kicking the dust type of vibe.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so I want to, I guess, share some actionable takeaways from this because if someone listening to this, first of all, you might have just recently moved on, meaning you might have recently gone through a big change. Maybe it was kind of thrust upon you, like maybe you got laid off, right? And that could be devastating, or it could be the start of something completely new, right? Or you could be sitting in your current life right now and you know, like in your bones that it is time to move on, but you are terrified to do it, or you don't know what the first steps are. What would be, Andrew, like a good first step for somebody who knows it's time to move on, but isn't sure how to do it?
I think the first thing you need to do, as we always talk about, is that awareness where you can look at your situation and go, this person, place, thing, event, situation is not serving me in the way that it used to. And when you acknowledge that it's no longer serving you, then you ask yourself the question, what would I like it to look like? Before you do it, take any action, just start to get a vision of how you want things to actually be. Because saying you want to move on from something and going, okay, I'm throwing out the shirt. Well, now you're shirtless in this particular example. And, you probably want to have a shirt on of some kind and just, or at least a transition point. I know when you're moving on, I just hammered that's what happens when you give me a compliment on something. I'm like, well, I'll use it a million times. But when you start to move on from these things, you need to be able to look at it and go, okay, this job doesn't serve me anymore, and I need something else. Rather than coming out of scarcity with it or lack, what is the best thing I could want to do right now? What is the thing that's going to light me up? What is the job that's going to make me feel really good about what I'm doing? What aspects of it? And in your mind, what you start to do is get that excitement that we're talking about. You
Yes.
start to think about it. You start to have a vision of the future, and you want to make that vision very compelling in your mind because you're going to be revisiting it over and over again because that strengthens the neural pathway of positive expectation. It's going to help prune the old way of being in your synapses. And as you do that more and more, you're going to get a little more excited about the potentiality of this new way of being, this new job, this new lifestyle, whatever it is, this new way of eating for that matter.
Yeah.
And when you have that vision, it's a lot easier to go through the small steps that are going to come up because the small steps are going to be different in every situation. Like for a job, you might want to start a side hustle and do the thing that really you enjoy at night while working your jobs to build it up with, with clothing. It's a lot simpler. It really is a trip to, put the thing in a bag, go to Goodwill and be done with it and then go shopping. And I think the thing that you mentioned before is a really good thing to consider. And it's that every yes is a no to everything else. So when you are picking right now, when you're picking that new thing, whatever it is, know that when you say yes to that, you are effectively saying no to a bunch of other things. And that is
Yep.
not meant to overwhelm you. That is meant for you to go like, what is it that's like the biggest yes?
Yeah.
And if you don't know, flip a coin. Say, I want to be a lion tamer and I also want to be a statistician. You flip the coin, you get lion tamer, and you're like, no, I actually wanted to be the statistician. So, like just there's little tricks to, when we get in our heads and we're like, well, I don't know what I want. Like you do. You want happiness, you want joy, you want love, you want abundance, you want to feel expansive in your own body. You don't want to feel tight. You don't want to feel contrived. You want to feel these different ways and you know them in your heart and soul. You just haven't checked in with them. And once you start to do that, your life is going to expand in ways that I cannot tell you right now because you wouldn't believe it. But trust me, you do.
I love that. I feel like that is a really powerful place to tie it up and stop. And just to tack on to it, the one thing that you said that I really want our listeners to take away from this is there is no timeline. People think that these changes have to happen quickly, and they can. But a lot of times, what we encourage our coaching clients to do is just to insert, like you said, that little bit of joy into their lives. So if we've used this example before, if someone's always wanted to be a rock star, we don't suggest to quit your job and go be a rock star, but we do say, well, hey, maybe every Tuesday night at that open mic night at your coffee shop, you go and sing some songs again. And it gives you something to look forward to, and it adds some joy and excitement to your life as you start to layer in and become more of the person that you have always wanted to be, right? So don't be afraid to start adding little things into your life. Don't feel like it has to be this completely, overnight type of thing. Give yourself the time and the space to step into the new version of yourself in whatever way that makes sense to you.
I love that. Okay, well, I think it's time for our glimmers. And if you're new to the show, it's our little bit of slice of happiness for the week that we've got to experience or getting to experience. So, Kat, what's yours?
I got to take my twins out to lunch yesterday. They have a birthday coming up, and they told me that a lot of kids' parents at school, they'll pick them up, go out. We went to go get McDonald's. They were very excited, and then bring them back to school. And they just thought that was the coolest thing ever. They're like, it's so weird to be out of school in the middle of the day. I mean, we went all out. I let them get a little ice cream at the end of it and everything. I had an iced coffee, but that was nice for me too. And yeah, that was my glimmer. I just love them so much. Like, I got teary eyed on the drive back to school because I was like, you guys are getting so big. I don't know how it happened. And they were like, Mom, but that was for sure a highlight and a glimmer of the week. What about you?
I love that. You say that and my mind immediately goes to when my mom used to come get me. I had braces and like for 6 years, it was terrible, but I used to have to go out every time. I would get so excited to leave school that I was getting 4 teeth pulled and I was still really excited just to get out of school. My mom always jokes about
nice
that.
Break.
Like, yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, exactly. How many more teeth can I get rid of to miss a day of
My
school?
God.
4 was the answer for that one for anybody listening at home. My glimmer this week is the kindness of everybody around me. Unfortunately, my son had a really bad hockey accident a couple of days ago, and he's got a concussion. And it's just been amazing. The friends, the new and old, that have reached out with support and kindness and advice, and I get emotional thinking about just how much love there actually is in this world for people, even when they don't know my son directly. It's just the love and outpouring has just been fabulous, and I'm so grateful for it. And I never use these kind of words, but it has been just so amazing. I'm blessed.
That, and we hope that he improves quickly and feels better soon.
Thank you. He's better and better every day. So, all right, folks, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Hey guys, quick disclaimer. We're podcasters on the internet. If you need to seek professional help, please go see your healthcare professional.